Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do most Sundays of the month. The first Sunday of the month is Subscriber Sunday, where subscribers send in photos of things in their yard that they're proud of. Last Sunday was Subscriber Sunday. There were like 10 minutes of photos. It was the biggest one by far and away in the 2 years or so that I've been doing that particular video. So thank you for participating in that. You can send photos to this email address right here. Whatever photos I receive during the month of September, you'll see in the first Sunday in October. That's how that works. The rest of the Sundays, I do question and answer videos, and you can ask gardening questions down below this video, and I will pick from those. There's a playlist on my channel called Garden Question and Answer, or Question and Answer videos, or something like that. You can go back and look at some of those videos if you want to. If you're looking for a particular time of year question, like if you wanted to know about winterizing something, you might want to look at videos that were question and answer videos that were done in October, of last year or something like that, because that timing is probably going to be when I would have answered those types of questions about, winterizing or fertilizing or whatever it is, whatever time of year. Those question and answers probably line up with those things that you have in your mind. Okay, I did several videos in the last week and a half or so on the shrubs and trees and perennials and annuals that went into this yard. I'm gonna have a what's next video in the next few days of all the projects that I have, that I want to do fall and winter. And I did a tour video at the Southern Living Idea House in Asheville this past week. I think the magazine comes out sometime this week with the Idea House in it, and I have to wait till after that to publish that video. The landscaping is newly planted, and so the plants are a little small in terms of the scale of the house, but the design is good, and I think you guys will enjoy that video. And if nothing else, the house is absolutely beautiful, and it's in Asheville, North Carolina, which is one of the. If you haven't been to Asheville, North Carolina, it's a pretty amazing place, and it's just beautiful up there in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So that video will be coming sometime this week, and I've got some another tour video I'm actually working on for this week as well. Okay, let's get to the questions that were asked from 2 weeks ago, and like I say, ask questions down below, and I'll pick from those next week. Somebody asked me about starting a native plant nursery, and wanted to know what suggestions I would have for somebody starting a native plant nursery. I don't know whether there's no difference really between a native plant nursery and any other nursery. The main thing is, probably any other business, you need to know what your market's going to be, how you're going to sell them. A lot of these plants are fairly easy to produce, but they're not necessarily easy to find a market for. And so knowing that when I started my nursery, I initially started doing some retail right out of the gate, because I knew that it was going to take me a while to build a wholesale business. I was going to have to compete against existing nurseries to sell to garden centers or to landscapers. It's going to take people a long time to find you. So in the short term, I think you probably have to do some sort of retail wholesale combination. And then, and like I say, that's no difference whether you were doing natives or non-native plants. I get a ton of comments about, people wanting to plant all native plants. I have a lot of native plants in this yard, but I also have a lot of what I would call non-native, non-invasive plants. And I think they have a role in our landscapes as well. What would scare me, okay, is if everybody went to all native plants, okay? And I'm not discouraging native plants. I want lots of native plants planted all over the US, and wherever you're watching me in the world, you should be using some of your native plants. What concerns me though, and you think about this, is if we go to all native plants, people are going to pick like 10 perennials and 10 shrubs, and that's all they're going to plant because they're the best of the native plants, and we're going to end up with disease problems in those plants. And we've seen it many, many times, many other plants in my history in this business, where we've planted them like crazy, Photinia, Leyland cypress, pear trees, and then Cleveland pears and Bradford pears, and now knockout roses, where everybody had to have them, and now we see rose rosette just just wiping them out everywhere. Human nature dictates that everybody's going to want the best 10 native perennials in their yard, or the best 10 native shrubs, and I'm fearful that we would cause problems to the actual native plants that are out in the woods by doing that. And so I do think that there's definitely a place for, like I say, non-native plants that are not invasive, that they don't seed themselves. There's a lot of work being done that in plant breeding. So I went on too long about native plants, but I do have that fear. I do want people to put natives in. I want you to put host plants for pollinators. I want you to put plants that feed the pollinators, all those kinds of things. But the plants do need to be broken up in order to for us not to create disease and insect issues. Probably have some people that don't like that. Somebody asked me, made a comment that they like all the t-shirts I have. This is an old map of Raleigh. I get a lot of my t-shirts from the House of Swank. It's in downtown Raleigh. If you're in the Triangle area, they do lots of t-shirts that are Raleigh based or Wake County or this part of North Carolina based t-shirts. I have made a few new t-shirts on my Teespring account that's always linked down below recently as well, and you guys will start seeing those. I ordered them for myself, and you'll start seeing those in the next couple weeks. Okay, somebody asked me the best deer repellent. If you are going to have plants that are going to be grazed by deer constantly, that I Must Garden product is a pretty good product to use. The only problem with any of those granular deer repellents though is, will you always remember? I don't know. It's very difficult, and really probably should definitely be investing in plants or fences or something like that. Plants that don't get eaten, or fences and that kind of thing. Because I know for a fact that I would never be consistent with that product. But I Must Garden is a good repellent, and they've got repellents for everything, for rabbits, they have very specific repellents, and I have used them in the past, and I sold them at my garden center, and they do work. I just wouldn't trust myself to constantly do it. Somebody asked me why I use triple shredded hardwood, and this is a good example of it right here. I like the way that it mats down, which is what this is doing here. It ends up, when they shred it multiple times, this hardwood mulch like this multiple times, it ends up being able to kind of hold itself together really tightly, and it erodes less. I also trust that it's just ground up bark from a tree. Some of the bagged products now are ground up pallets and wood products, and I don't know where those wood products came from. I don't know what those pallets had on them. I don't know, that kind of thing. So I prefer to use it. It tends to stay in place. It also has a fairly consistent size once they've ground it 3 times, and triple shredded hardwood. And that means it breaks down pretty evenly. It doesn't leave big giant sticks laying out here as the small stuff breaks down. And it just, because of its size, it makes a really tight cover on the ground, which does a great job of insulating, holding water in place, regulating temperature, which I guess is insulating, and weed prevention as well. So, but that's why I like and the color. The color is excellent on it as well. So that's the main reasons. Nothing against the other things. I just think it's a little bit better than most of the other options. Okay. Somebody said about they had moved from Iowa, which is zone 5 into zone 7, and wanted to start doing some containers outdoors through the winter time, and wanted to know. I've answered this question a lot of times over the years. If you're going to put things in containers, put plants in the containers that are 1 or 2 hardiness zones colder than yours. And so if you're in zone 7, look for things that are hardy into zone 5 to put in containers. And most of those things will overwinter in the containers with limited protection. Something that's only hardy into zone 6 may need some protection in zone 7, but you'll lose a zone or 2 of cold hardiness having something above the ground where the roots are exposed to the cold. And so, this is a good time of year to be. I'm switching out a bunch of containers in the next couple weeks, and that's something I'll be looking for. I think I'll go find me some upright narrow conifers. I'll just make sure they're cold hardy a couple zones higher than mine. So I'm in zone 7B or almost 8. I'll look for things that are hardy in zone 5 or 6A, and they should overwinter fine. Let me see. Somebody has some. They have peanut grass in Florida, and they wanted to overseed with annual rye in the winter and wondered if that was a good idea. Yeah, I think you could definitely overseed annual rye into it. No, though, every time I've ever put rye into a space over the winter, it's done some damage to the existing grasses. I mean, it's pretty aggressive. This past year, I had a problem. I had to do maintenance on a couple places in Raleigh, and I had a problem because the spring just wouldn't warm up. It stayed so cool for so long, and that ryegrass just wouldn't die, and it did some damage to the Bermuda grass because I just couldn't. I was scalping it off, just trying to get rid of it as that Bermuda grass was coming back, and it created some thin spots. But in a normal year, it's fine. It should get hot pretty quick in Florida and burn it off pretty quick, and it'll look great through the winter. I think but up here in North Carolina, it can linger a little longer and, potentially do some damage to your warm season grass. But I won't put anything over this zoysia grass. I'm just going to let it go. That dead looking color that it will be during the winter time, and I'll be totally fine with it. I'm going to try to keep some foot traffic off of it though, because it's probably going to be a little wet at that time. I could do some damage to it while it's dormant by putting a lot of foot traffic on it. Okay, somebody asked me about replacing Bermuda grass in their hell strip, the piece between the sidewalk and the road that's so hard to grow things in. Currently they have Bermuda grass, and of course it creeps out constantly. So you constantly have to edge along the sidewalk every time you mow, pretty much, with Bermuda grass. It grows so quickly, and they wanted to plant something else out there. I've got a lot of neighbors in the neighborhood who use ornamental grasses in those situations, and it seems to work well. I've seen some people using Mexican petunias this year, which can get up pretty tall, but they're super upright and narrow. That's a pretty good choice. And other ornamental grasses, but they asked specifically about using Liriope spicata, which is the spreading Liriope. I would never use Liriope spicata for anything. That stuff can crack no sidewalk. It's really, really invasive. So you can use Liriope muscari, which is the clumping Liriope, and it would eventually fill in. But I would not recommend that anybody ever use Liriope spicata. No chemical will kill it. Shovels there's some of it here in this backyard, and I've spent the last, we're at 10 months or so trying to get it out of here, and it's still coming back with my best efforts. And so I think I'll be fighting it for another year probably. And that's me focused on it, trying to fight it. I wouldn't recommend it. Even in that hell strip where it's contained by concrete, I wouldn't recommend it. Okay. Let's see, but other ornamental grasses, non-invasive, non-aggressive ornamental grasses would work great out there. Let's see. Somebody asked, they got some Formosa azaleas in the spring and planted them, and they've got a few blooms on them in the late summer and wanted to know if they'd still bloom in the spring. I think they still will, no problem, but plants do weird things when we plant them in the first year. I kind of answer that question a lot. I can get that question in 100 versions, of my, I planted this in the spring and it's got brown leaves, or it's got green leaves instead of purple leaves, or it's got no growth, or it's got growth on one side, all kinds of questions I can get around this. But most of the time the answer is it's only 6 months old and it's going to do weird things, potentially in the first 6 months because you ripped it out of a pot and stuck it in the ground, and potentially overwatered it or underwatered it or something while it was establishing itself, and it got a little weird for a little while. Most of those things will come out no problem. And the next question, somebody got some white wedding hydrangeas, and I've got 3 of them back here, and they just didn't do any growing, and they were kind of weird this past year. And they just put on almost no new growth in the first year. Same thing. I mean, it's just a stress thing. Mine didn't really grow any height at all. They just came out, maybe put on a couple inches of growth and then flowered. Next year, I expect to get some actual vertical growth out of them. Let's see. Somebody asked me if I had a new camera because apparently it looks better. And yes, I did get a new camera. I had 3 years with the same camera on this channel, and I finally invested in a new camera. And so I hope it does look better, and eventually have all my stuff in 4K. Let's see. Somebody asked me about putting dirt. They've got 2 large oak trees, and they want to plant around them, and they want to create some bed space. And they want to know if they should they can put like topsoil and mulch on top of them. You can definitely mulch over the roots, not crazy amounts, but you can definitely mulch over the roots. I would not put soil over the roots. Oaks are extremely sensitive to root compaction, and you know, if you ride on them with vehicles and that kind of thing, you can significantly damage them. So I'm assuming it's the exact same thing if you were to put 4 inches of soil over top of them as well. So I don't think soil would be a good idea, but you can't, like I say, you can mulch. And heck, the trees are a few weeks away from trying to mulch themselves. You know, they're by dropping their own leaves around the trunks, which is what they do every fall. And then humans decide that the tree didn't know what was best for it, and we rake them up. So, which is always kind of funny to me. But they are trying to insulate themselves in the fall. So mulch won't be a problem. And then I think you're just going to have to find the spots in between the roots to be able to plant things. Oaks are pretty tolerant of things being planted around them usually. But when you're planting new things around established trees, you're going to have to water a lot in the first season, maybe 2 seasons, until those things can root in and start to compete. The established tree will not play nice with newly planted things. And it may take, you're probably best to put drip irrigation down, then mulch it, and then, like I say, identify the places where you might be able to plant some things and plug some things into it. And then that way your drip irrigation will be there, help the tree and the new plants. Okay, somebody wants a holly that has a blue-green color. There are actually blue hollies, and they have a bluish hue to them. They're not blue, but they do have a bluish hue to them. I grew blue princess at my nursery when I was growing them, and there's a bunch of new ones as well, but they're literally called blue hollies. Let's see, I'll answer one more here in this video. This is a good one. Somebody's they're in zone 4 or 5, and they planted bulbs in the past, and they have chipmunks and squirrels dig them up. Wanted to know if they could plant their bulbs in containers, maybe put some sort of wire mesh over the top. I did that in a video at the old house, probably 2 falls ago. And yeah, you can definitely do that as long as they're the super cold hardy bulbs like hyacinths and tulips and, you know, ones that are more cold hardy than your area. You can absolutely put them in containers, and then just put the containers close to the house and put some sort of mesh over top of them to keep them from being dug out of there. But you can also do the same thing in the ground. You could plant them in the ground and then put some sort of wire mesh over the ground until they start to emerge in the late winter, or till the soil's hardened back off and the squirrels then have a harder time finding them once they're sealed off. It's usually when they have the loose soil, when they're newly planted, that they have an easy time getting in there and getting them out. But you can do the same thing in the ground. You can just cover them. And I planted my fall vegetables over here and just put a frost protection blanket right over the top of them. Similar kind of thing. I'm just trying to keep something from grazing on them until they get some size on them, and then I'll pull that blanket off. So, okay, guys, thank you very much for participating in these question and answer videos. Ask questions down below. Thanks for participating, and next Sunday I'll have another question and answer video.